Hi guys, welcome back to Subtractive Synthesis 101 with Sonic Academy. In this video we're going to have a look at the effects section in a synth, and want to have a little chat about it because a lot of people get quite sniffy about using effects built into synths, which I think is a little bit foolhardy because there's a couple of things. First of all, the effects that are built into synths these days are pretty good, and the second thing is there are things that you can do with effects that are built into synthesizers that are quite tricky to do or sometimes impossible to do with third-party plugins. So, for example, there's Massive. Actually, I've got Massive selected here for some reason. Massive has got an effect in it called the Dimension Expander, which I think is based on delay or reverb, but it almost sounds psychoacoustic. It makes a sound much larger, bigger, more spacious. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but you'll find it difficult to do that effect without Massive itself. And you've also got things like the chorus in the old Roland Juno synths was very famous as being an integral part of the synth engine. And then you've got the distortion in Sylenth, which it's pretty cruddy, but it sounds quite nice sometimes. And then there's things like the phaser in the Virus, which if you hear it, you'll recognize it from a million tunes from early 2000. So don't just write them off because people tell you that third-party plugins are better, because they're not always better. Okay, that's the rant over. Now, what I've done here is I have created a very simple little pluck in Serum, which is based on two oscillators being 7 semitones or a fifth apart. And let's listen to that quickly. If I can switch it on. Keep doing this to myself. So it's a very simple little pluck sound, and I'll just run through it quickly. Two saw oscillators. One of them is pushed up 7 semitones, as I just said, which is a fifth, an interval of a fifth. Envelope 1 is set to create quite a short amp section. So envelope 1, if you remember, is hardwired to the amp. Envelope 2 is a very plucky shape with just a little bit of decay, and that's routed to the filter cutoff. So you can see that working here. If you follow the blue dot here, you can see it working on the filter cutoff. And then envelope 3, I've given quite a high attack, or quite a long attack. And the reason I've done that is I'm going to assign this to a reverb. So let's open up the effects section and switch the reverb on. And if you remember how you can assign modulation in Serum, you can just grab envelope 3 here and assign it to the reverb mix. So I'll drop that on here. And what you'll see is as I hold the note down, you'll see the blue dot go along the attack curve here. And as it does, the reverb mix is going to increase. Let's change the curve a little bit to change the way that feeds in. So that's quite a nice effect there, which you can do it otherwise with third-party plugins, but this is much, 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 much easier. So I'm just trying to illustrate the use of your modulation matrix, which we looked at in the last video on the effects section in the synth. So let's try something else. I'm just going to freestyle a bit here. Let's look at distortion. So let's switch the distortion on and use something fuzzy. Turn the drive up, and let's pull the mixed knob down, and we might actually pull the distortion after the reverb so it affects the reverb tail as well. So let's just drag this down. This is something handy you can do in Serum. Okay, let's go back to the... No, actually, I think we'll use velocity. So what I'll do is I'll drag velocity. So this is going to be my modulation source, and the destination is going to be the distortion mix value. So let's drop it on there. Go away. So what this is going to do is, if you recall what we did in the last video, the blue line is going to define the value at which the modulation is going to take effect. So down at the bottom of the blue line here, that's going to be 0 velocity, and at the top of the blue line, that's going to be maximum velocity. So if I drag this all the way down, if I play the note really softly, you're going to get almost no distortion whatsoever. And then if I hit the note really hard, you'll hear lots of distortion. And you can still hear the reverb going on in the background as well that we modulated in before. So again, that's something that's going to be tricky or difficult to do just using third-party plugins. So why would you ignore the plugins built in? I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we can do. What we could also do is we could use the envelope to bring in another effect as well. So let's choose envelope 3. This is the one that's controlling the reverb. And we'll switch on a flanger. And this time we will keep the mix value fairly static. And I think we'll bring the flanger after the reverb again. And this envelope will now affect the rate of the flanger, which is how fast you're flanging. So let's bring this up here. So as the envelope 3 attack increases here, it's going to turn the rate up. Now I'm not sure how musical this is going to be, but let's see what it sounds like. Yeah, it works quite well. So what that's doing is it's flanging the reverb tail, because the notes, the sound itself is already finished, and we're just hearing the reverb tail at this point. So let's do that again. I actually quite like that. I'm not sure how useful it would be in a track, but you know, we'd find a way. So there you go. There's the reasons why I think you shouldn't ignore the effects section of your synth, and you should try and incorporate it within the sound design, because there's creative things that you can do with your mod matrix. Now, in the next video, we're going to start doing sound design proper, and I think the first thing we will do is probably start taking a look at some really simple percussive sounds. So I might create a kick and some hi-hats with oscillators. So you're not going to have any samples, although I might throw a loop over the top of it to make it sound fantastic. So we'll just make a kick and some hi-hats. I'll see you there.